Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Jazakallah khair for everybody who's here so far. I know this time might not be the best time for everybody, this being Ramadan. For some, it probably is too early, like 10 a.m. on the Pacific coast. And for some, it might be Zohar time. And I actually had somebody who was joining in from Saudi Arabia, and he said, this is Taraweeh happening for me right now. So I'm really grateful for everybody who joined. Jazakallah khair for this. Thank you so much. And we'll also record this session and share it for the other people who want to attend but couldn't for whatever reason. We've had a very strong response rate for this webinar. Inshallah, we'll share it for all those people as well. So a quick agenda. I won't take too much time. Most of this time is for our dear Sheikh, Mufti Faraz. I'll just take a quick second to introduce Aghaz. I'll introduce Mufti Faraz. And then it's really a dialogue from Mufti Faraz on disparate topics about Zakat. Zakat is one of the fundamental pillars, as we all know, and Ramadan is typically the time where we all calculate and give off our Zakat. So this is probably a good opportune timing for us to discuss different aspects of Zakat. I know I myself, every year, have a new question about Zakat that just comes up, and we'll cover some of those topics in there today as well. If you have any questions, please use the chat box or email it to me or whatever you want, but we'd like it to have a very engaging question and answer session from everybody. And we also have some topics that we can go into. Timing wise, we're probably going to take about 30 to 40 minutes total, including some question and answers at the end. So I look forward to learning from our Sheikh, inshallah, as we go. To get started, a little bit about Aghaz investments. I actually see that many of us attendees and people who registered actually are our current customers. So special thanks to them. Aghaz launched last year and we have over 2,000 customers now, 2,200 customers actually as of a few days ago. And alhamdulillah, we are just getting started. We're still very new, we're still very small, and we're trying different things to add value for our customers. But our goal is to become a one place personalized Islamic financial advisor for our customers. Everything we want to do with our finances, whether it's planning, whether it's investing, whether it's giving, we want it to occur under the umbrella of Aghaz, inshallah. So it's a financial planning tool that does actively managed portfolios that are aligned with your goals. We are also, and we are pretty excited about it, coming up with some thematic ETF products, inshallah, soon this year, which will be, they're always going to be Sharia compliant, but we'll have social impact and environmental and social ETF filters as well. We have actually been testing some of these products, and it's very interesting to see how well some of these products perform with respect to the rest of the market. So we are very excited to launch that in a few months this year. We also have the standard stock screeners where you can check whether the investments that you have at Fidelity or E-Trade or wherever else, if they're compliant with your values. We provide a bunch of financial tools to calculate and give zakat and savings projections and so on. And we're also coming up with integrated charitable donations so that for each of your accounts that you have, with a single click, you can donate, and that goes to the charity of your choice. We're also investigating something that is becoming very popular in the United States, which is called donor advised funds, which are charitable tools that are tax advantaged for our customers. So there's a lot of work happening from our side on that, and we'd love to share that with you shortly. In addition, our main focus is to improve financial inclusion and literacy. So we are honored that Mufti Faraz, Sheikh Umar Khan, and some of our other advisors give us these insights and blogs that we publish for our customers on our app itself, just to learn more about financial topics as well as Islamic finance topics. So just as a thank you for everybody who attends today or who might watch this video, it's not much, but just as a small, we'll waive off all the fees for everybody. Many of you are already customers, so we'll make sure that you don't get charged any fees for the next 3 months or so. And if you're not yet a customer and you start an account now, we'll also make sure we do the same thing for you as well. That's just as a small jazakallah from our side for attending this informative session, inshallah, today. So let me actually, that was all from my side. Let me just introduce Mufti Faraz a little bit. Personally, Mufti Faraz and I've worked with him for about a year, a little bit over that now. And it's been my honor actually to just talk to him. He's wonderful brother, mashallah. I have learned so much from him. And the thing I like most about him is that he actually has a great blend of both the Western finance curriculum as well as Islamic finance knowledge. So many people actually can do Islamic finance, but if they don't understand the financial concepts and instruments, it's hard to get the good idea about Islamic elements in there as well. So as you can see from his short bio that I placed up here, he has an MBA and financial knowledge from the Western finance perspective, as well as from a Mufti course in South Africa and in the UK that he's done. Mufti Faraz, is this accurate? You're still a candidate for the Chartered Institute, or did you finish that? Because this is a little bit old now.
Yeah, no, I'm still studying because it's like self-paced.
Okay,
six papers. So yeah, still a short while to go still. But alhamdulillah,
that's great.
Learning it's a lifetime journey, right?
Yeah. So let me just pause there. I don't have any. I would turn it over to dear Mufti Faraz, and this is my contact information. My email is over here. I'm happy to have anybody just reach out to me if they need to for any question whatsoever. Inshallah, I'll be happy to help. So I'm going to stop share and give the floor to Mufti Faraz, and inshallah he can take it from here.
Jazakallah khair. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with you all today. I mean, I have no particular slides that I want to share, but I guess it's just a conversation that we'll have around the topic of zakat and investments in general. And you're more than welcome to ask any queries. Inshallah, we'll attend to those queries towards the end. But I think what I want to begin with is just to focus our minds on what exactly is zakat, right? And this year I've been very strong towards this idea that zakat is more than just a payment. Okay, we treat zakat as a 2.5%, which it is, but that's where the story of zakat starts. Zakat as a pillar represents so many things, and we need to embody those things that zakat represents. What's happened is because of our lifestyles, we've kind of made everything so easy. For example, Qurbani and Udhiyah has become a payment for us, but that's an entire spirit of sacrifice, right? So when it's Eid al-Adha, the idea was that we take an animal, we look after an animal, we raise the animal, we show it affection, and when the time comes to sacrifice, we sacrifice. Yes, it's hard upon us because we're sacrificing an animal which we become attached to, but it's purely for the sake of Allah, right? And therefore you feel it, okay? And actions are there to be felt. Zakat needs feeling. Why and how? Zakat is about this empathy for people, having care and concern for your neighbor, for those around you, for those in challenging times. And if we don't go out and find people or support people out hand to hand, sometimes that experience never comes to fruition, and therefore we never feel what's actually happening. Yeah, we might see one video clip here and there, but it's not the same as actually giving a hand to somebody and pulling them up. It's never the same, right? So there's a lot of value in zakat in that sense, where it really opens our heart up. It really makes us realize that, the wealth that we have. And I always ask myself this question, and I share this question in any webinar that I'm doing. Wealth that we've given is not for wealth's sake. We're not becoming rich just to become rich for the sake of becoming rich, right? That's not the purpose in Islam. What's the point of being so rich if that richness and wealth will not last forever with you? It's not going to come with you in the hereafter. So surely there's better things to do with the money that we have, right? And that's what Aghaz is doing, right? It's about investing for your goals. That's really where it comes into, and that's tremendous. The way that's put in together in Aghaz is just exactly hits the nail on the head. We should have goals in our life. What do we want to achieve with the money that we have? And that's exactly the purpose of wealth, because Allah tells in the Quran that seek the hereafter with the money that I've given you or the wealth I've given you. وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا. And also, don't forget the share in this worldly life of yours. Look after your worldly life, live a dignified life, right? But don't forget, use your money to further your closest to Allah in the hereafter. We have resources. These are all resources, right? These are all resources that we have. Let's maximize the utility of the resources by investing them in areas and ways which align with our values and with Sharia. And most importantly, for the long term, the best investment is that which assists you for the long term, right? Which pays back dividends in the long term, right? Something which is short-lived has no value. So zakat is about this idea of making the payment, yes, having empathy, understanding our community, having togetherness in the community, helping those who are disadvantaged in any way, shape, or form. And then also, from a spiritual perspective, showing gratitude and gratefulness to Allah. If Allah has given us wealth, it's a huge, huge blessing, right? Wealth is a huge blessing. So your zakat is a form of gratitude to Allah. We're thanking Allah with our zakat, that Allah, this 2.5% doesn't belong to me. You've ordained that this belongs to other people. And that's why from my wealth, I'll take this out. It doesn't belong to me. And that's how our wealth, when we say zakat purifies your wealth, what do we mean? Okay. It means that 2.5% doesn't belong in our portfolio of wealth. And that's why it's impure. That amount needs to go out to somebody else, right? It belongs to somebody else. It doesn't belong to me. So zakat is about purification. Zakat is about togetherness. Zakat is about the community. And zakat is about having empathy, building empathy within us, having hearts which care for one another, having humbleness, humility. This is what zakat brings. Every pillar of Islam adds a different dimension in our life. Every pillar of Islam. And it's a longer conversation, but it's something for us to sit down and explore and think. Everything in Islam has a worldly benefit, right? And a spiritual benefit. Of course, we do things to get close to Allah, but Allah's all-wise and his Sharia and the teachings of Islam are full of wisdom. Everything that is there. So we can't invest in alcohol. We can't drink alcohol. Why? Because look at the carnage it does, right? Look at the harm it gives to the body. Look at the kind of like, in the UK, the public services, how much it costs the health service in just dealing with cases of alcohol, right? How many times is domestic violence because of alcohol? So it makes clear sense. The teachings of Islam are so, subhanAllah, so logical, make so much sense, and are so wholesome and full of value that if we adopt them, then it'll truly make a change. So that's all I want to really say on zakat. And it's kind of like pivotal role it plays in our life, right? And why we need to connect with zakat. And just one more point, charity starts at 2.5%, right? Very important. Zakat is not charity per se. Charity is your private donations that you make. Zakat is something you have to do. So let us be more charitable. Let us not just rely on zakat on 2.5%. Let's understand that our charity really begins at 2.5%. That's when you're voluntary doing things. Voluntarily, you're making payments. That's really something like, a wow factor when you, out of your own kind of like good intention, you're making donations to people, helping people, anyone, whichever cause, to masajid, to education institutes, to a poor person, to a non-Muslim who's in need, any person, right? You make those donations.
So Jazakallah khair for this. This is wonderful. It's interesting how you pivoted your message, saying that there is a hidden value in all of the Sharia principles, including zakat, for example. So maybe we talked about this a little bit, but Dr. Usman Umarji, who is a wonderful scholar, he's also very well versed in the Western finance. He's a professor, also works at Yaqeen Institute here in Dallas also. So he and I were talking recently, and his passion is zakat. Like he feels everything he wants to do, it's about, there's specialities in everything. Some are Quran, some are this, that. He's zakat. And he's passionate about that. So what he told me one time was, he feels that at least in America and UK, the Western countries, the way we calculate zakat is not entirely correct. The way we give zakat, like the recipients, is not entirely correct. So he feels there is a real crisis about zakat. And we have to all work together towards it. Do you want to comment on that? Do you think what I do, for example, I have an Excel sheet, dump all my assets in 2.5%, that's my zakat. Can you comment on that? Like, are we actually being as detail oriented about calculating, and then the recipient of zakat also?
Yeah, I mean, in terms, definitely there's always more work to be done in terms of knowledge on zakat, because look, the investment space or the asset class space that we have, right, has grown. The different types of asset classes that we have, types of investments that we have. There's so many new asset classes out there. So how do we treat them for zakat purposes? And then when it comes to actual accuracy of calculation, that's a whole nother area which many of us, are very lazy, unfortunately, right? We're just guessing sometimes, or we don't bother going the full way. I mean, if somebody was to tell us that you'd be penalized if it was your taxes and there's a potential penalty, we'll be so intricate and very careful and mindful of how we calculate our tax, right? And how we give our self-return, a self-assessment. But when it comes to zakat, we're very laid back, very easygoing, and that shouldn't be the case. And even for recipients and beneficiaries, there's so much information that we need to look at before who we give to. The due diligence is very important, right? And what is zakat eligible, what is not zakat eligible, because a lot of this is abused, right? Especially in our countries, because today anything can be zakat eligible, right? And we know that's not the case, and that's a big concern also. So yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like there needs to be more work done on that, and that's why, I mean, not to just blow my own trumpet or share anything, but alhamdulillah, just recently I released a book on zakat, right, called Zakat Made Easy, just for this very reason. I'm also feel like there's so much work to be done on zakat, and it's definitely something that we need to continuously work upon.
Do you want to share? I was trying to quickly find a link for that book. Do you, if it's okay, maybe later you can tell it.
Yeah, no worries.
I will share it with all the attendees here, because to me also, it's when we are fasting, when we are making our Hajj, we follow the letter of the law very carefully, right? I mean, this morning, just as a small side note, I had a little cut down here somewhere, and I had a drop of blood come out, and all of a sudden, and I'm fasting, I'm like, oh my God, now what do I do? I have to make sure. But when it comes to zakat, as you said, we just give it wherever we feel like giving it, which is convenient for us. So I think that's something, a real service that you can offer, inshallah, by giving us a little bit more.
You know what it is? One of the reasons why this is because we've treated zakat as charity, right? And when I say charity, I mean the words that we use has an impact on the way we perceive things. Okay, so charity is something which is autonomous, something which is it's something which is you can give it when you want, how you want, to whom you want. It's very easygoing. It's something private. It's just like a donation. And because we've treated zakat as a charity, we're very easygoing and laid back about it. And the consequence of that is as well, we've stopped giving sadaqah altogether because we're sufficing on zakat. So I think it's about perception, understanding what zakat is and what zakat is not, right? From first principles basis, and then building on top of that.
Not? This is very interesting for me personally. What is zakat? What is not zakat? As you said.
Yeah, I mean, zakat is not just your day-to-day charity, right? You can't give zakat to whom you want, or when you want, or where you want, or how you want. Zakat has rules for each and every single thing, right? So zakat is not this kind of like donation, right? Although we use the word donation in English, but donation makes it seem very voluntary, sporadic, spontaneous, or just give 5 cents here or $1 here and that's your zakat done. That's not the case. Zakat has a system, zakat has an objective, zakat has a purpose, right? Zakat is there. One of the reasons why zakat is there, and that's what makes it a pillar of Islam. I mean, what does a pillar do? A pillar supports its infrastructure, right? Or the structure that it's supporting. Zakat is there to support Islam. How? That's why zakat is given to needy people so that they don't fall into questioning Allah's existence. Because the hadith tells us that poverty can lead to disbelief. People who are in a desperate situation, they can start questioning their faith. So zakat is there to protect people from leaving the faith, and that's why you can't give zakat to non-Muslims either. It's related to faith development, faith building of the poor and needy. It's not just about alleviation of poverty. Poverty is alleviated for the reason of protecting the faith.
That's interesting. I had a personal question about it. I've always wondered about it. And it's, we don't dive too deep on certain things about Islam, like how many people were in the cave, those kind of questions. But why is it 2.5%?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Why is it 2.5%? And this is something, look, this is from the hadith itself. It's divinely selected. We don't know the exact, when it comes to numbers, there's no real kind of like specific reason. So whenever there's numbers in Sharia, the principle and rule is there's no real kind of like why this. So for example, why is it 3 times we have to do X or 1 time Y, right? That's how it was shown to us. That's how Allah has decided. But we see that it's just such an easy form of payment to make, right? I mean, one thing is, it was 1 out of 40, right? It's a 40th. And so it's something very easy for us to pay. It's not burdensome whatsoever. It's not burdensome whatsoever. And there's definitely ease in that number, right? But why exactly 2.5%? That's one of Allah's mercy upon us.
Yeah. So this is great. We are also getting some questions, and there's one brother who has 3 questions. So I will let him actually ask his questions. I'll make him allow him to talk. We'll do that in a minute once we go through the rest of the questions. And if anybody else has any questions, please type your questions. And if there's a short question, I can actually let you ask the question to the Sheikh directly as well. But before we do that, there's some common questions, Mufti Faraz, that people ask. Our customers have asked those questions. So let's just go through them quickly.
Sure.
Because those probably are questions that everybody has over here, right? So how do you handle zakat on a retirement account, right? 401k, IRA, Roth, the implication being that money is kind of not available until I retire, which might be 20 years out. So there are different opinions about it. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, my perspective on 401k and these types of retirement accounts is zakat is due upon them, but not on the full value. Right? These are long only funds where the fund managers are typically rebalancing. They're more reactionary. There's a lot of like analysis done, fundamental analysis, technical analysis. The idea is to preserve story of value for a long term, right? And beat inflation, okay? So that when you retire, you have wealth which you can rely upon. So I don't find them such funds to be trading like a trader is, right? It's not like you're not trading. And therefore, zakat is due, but zakat will only be due proportionate to the zakatable assets in the fund. And typically, it's equities. And therefore, I mean, there's no study that's been done on the NASDAQ or NYSE, the New York Stock Exchange, when it comes to what's the typical asset composition. But in the UK, for example, we did a research on the FTSE 100, and we found that a typical company in the FTSE 100 has less than 25% of zakatable assets. So what we advise here is, if somebody has such a fund, if they take 25% or 26%, that should cover your zakat eligibility, right? And zakat liability. So each year you just take, so for example, if it's a Sharia fund, it's 26%, because with equity, there's always a bit of cash reserves, right? That stays a bit of dividend that's been gained and needs to be reinvested. So we advise typically 26%. That's based on my research. I looked at 20 different pension funds, Sharia funds, and I came up with this proxy. So I believe that zakat is due upon them, but it's not on the full value. Rather, it's upon just the proportionate amount. Because you're a shareholder, at the end of the day, you become a shareholder of those equity, those fund managers, right? And those funds become shareholders of those particular equities. So you're just a shareholder in a business. So you have a duty to pay zakat on the zakatable assets within that.
So if I heard you correctly, just to confirm it, if I have, let's say, a 401k plan where I have $1,000, but that's invested in this. Let's say total value is $1,000, but on average, 25% of that is zakatable assets. So are you saying that we pay zakat on 25% of that?
Yeah. So it's just say in this example, say 26%, right? It's if it's 1,000, so it's $260, right? Then you just pay 2.5% of $260. But this proxy is based on equities in the UK. I think there's definitely needs to be a research done on equities listed in the US, right? And what's the typical? I to be honest, I don't see much of a difference when it comes to the the cap structure and the cap table of a company and the balance sheets. It'll be look very similar, right? Wherever you are nowadays, anyway, it's kind of like globalized world. But I do feel that's definitely a conservative proxy when it comes to
that is a little it's new. It's something I haven't heard before, and I'll inshallah talk to you more about this because this is so important, right? So really, what happens if I have $1,000 in my 401k today? I could go today and liquidate my 401k, and I will have $1,000 minus a penalty of 10%, minus the capital gains and whatever tax I'll pay on it, which is, let's say, 30%, and then I am left with $700, $600. That's cash in my hand.
Yeah.
So shouldn't I be paying my zakat on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. And some scholars are of the view of this, right? That because you're paying on your current value, what you're worth right now. If you were to access that money, you're only worth net of expenses and penalties and tax, right? So that is also a one view, but there's some kind of like technical debates around this view. And just my view is at the moment, it's safer not to deduct it, right? Because there are scholars of the view that you shouldn't deduct that. But there are other scholars of the view that you can deduct this.
Okay, interesting.
And this is one of the areas, to be honest, which needs much more research. And what we were speaking about earlier, right? It's definitely one of those areas. And there are scholars who have the view that you only pay once when you liquidate for 1 year, right? There's also that view. So these are different views. Because this is such a contemporary matter, the scholars who are sitting on a different, sides of a spectrum on this particular point. There are some scholars of the view that you pay zakat on the full value every single year, right? There's also that view.
So I would actually, we should move on from this because there's other questions and people are raising hands as well. But I would actually like to sponsor a study where we would have, if it's okay with you, have you and Dr. Usman and Sheikh Umar probably author a study on this, on retirement accounts specifically, especially with the notion that you provided, because I know that other people have expressed different perspectives on it as well. So a good scholarly discourse, maybe we do another webinar targeted towards this topic. We can do it after Ramadan or so.
Most definitely.
That would be interesting. So I'll take the action on that and I will follow up on that. So I had from the previous questions that we had, and then we'll go to the attendees. I have 2 more questions on that. So about Bitcoin, a lot of us have some investments in Bitcoin. How do you treat the zakat on Bitcoin? Is zakat supposed to be in like assets? So 1,000 Bitcoin means 2.5, 25 zakat Bitcoins, for example.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. See, when it comes to crypto assets and digital assets in general, we're looking at what is that crypto asset? What is it functioning as fundamentally? Bitcoin was developed and created to function as a payment system. So for zakat purposes, anything which functions as a medium of exchange is always zakatable. That's why money is always zakatable, right? Whether Bitcoin is money or not, that's a different debate. But because it's being used as a medium of exchange, that's its kind of purpose it was created for, and it's used just as a payment mechanism, you will pay zakat on Bitcoin. You can do one of 2 things. You can take 2.5% of its dollar value, right? And pay accordingly. So if it's worth $1,000 right now, you just take 2.5% and pay in US dollars. You can also pay in Bitcoin itself. There are some charities now which accept zakat in the form of Bitcoin, right? So you could give, then if you want to do that, you just give 2.5% in Bitcoin, right? Right, you could do that as well. That's not a problem.
So basically, we treat it like a physical, like a zakatable asset, and based on its value, if it's above the nisab, then you give zakat on that. Whether it's
regardless of what your intention is. When it comes to Bitcoin, it doesn't matter what your intention is, why you invested in it, because its purpose is to be like a P2P payment system, right? And that's why it functions as, it'll be treated as a medium of exchange, and it's always zakatable.
Okay. So one final question from me, and then we have some questions that will come to that. So one of the things, as you and I have talked, actually, our very first chat, 18 months ago when we talked, one of the things you advised us was, talk about not just exclusion, like what is Islamically prohibited, therefore don't invest in it, but think about what should be included from an impact perspective, from social and environmental and values-based. So we are finally getting around to doing some things on that, as we've discussed. But don't you think zakat is also a social good? That when we talk about sustainability, and there's a lot of talk about the UN's sustainability goals, SDG, and all that, isn't zakat a solution to many of our sustainability problems?
Yeah, no, 100%. And this is one of the main things. I mean, Sharia is so comprehensive. What we do at present is only exclude things, and we think that's Sharia compliance. Compliance is just level 1, right? And that's more about excluding certain things, right? But then how do you, Sharia is also very wholesome. So ESG, SDG, responsible investing, ethical investing, all of these fall within the Sharia, to be honest. Because look, one is compliance. When you talk about compliance, compliance is a contractual thing to the letter of the law, right? A contract is compliant, we say. But there's other things to look at as well. So for example, what's the cash flows like? What's the structure of the investment like, right? Then number 3, what's our behavior like when we're transacting and trading one another? That's not just compliance. That's to do with behavior. Number 4, what's our mindset like? Mindset is also, Sharia also encourages specific mindsets. So if you're trading on a trade desk and the adhan is being called, but your heart is in the trade, right? You're more focused on the trade. Our mind and our heart's in the wrong place. Okay. So Sharia calls for wholesome thing. ESG as well. Sharia calls for the protection of nature, because nature is a means of reflecting on the signs of Allah, right? So in the environment, social and governance, even the way we treat our employees, our staff, labor, all these things, it all falls under Sharia principles. So Sharia has all of these things within it. It's all to do with behavior. So that's why I'm very passionate about this idea as well, that we need to move from just Sharia compliance to Sharia experience, right? If I can call it that, where it's wholesome. Any person that engages with us should know they've engaged in a Sharia kind of enriching way, because the Messenger of Allah, we know from his character, whenever he would trade with somebody, do business, investments, it'd be a very positive experience, right? And if a person is trading with us, investing with us, and it's not a positive experience, whether that's because of customer kind of service is not well, whether that's because then our tone isn't good, or our marketing is not to that standard that should be, then we haven't given people the Sharia experience they deserve, right? And which we should hold a standard to. Our standard should be at that high of end-to-end Sharia experience, and not just a kind of compliance with 1-2 contracts.
Okay, that's great. Actually, while you're talking, there's ideas coming in my head about what we can do about it.
Keep penning those ideas down.
We'll follow up on that. So I could actually have more questions, but let me actually ask Mustafa. He posted a couple of questions. So if you're around, Mustafa, would you mind asking your questions to the Sheikh directly? And if anybody else is interested, please send us a note or a question, and I can add you as well.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for giving the opportunity. So I think the first question was on 401k. So Sheikh answered that question. Just one clarification on that would be, would zakat be on the full amount or incremental amount? So that would be the first clarification on that. Secondly, if someone has a land or a plot or investment in another country and they don't plan to liquidate that investment, would zakat still have to pay zakat on that, or no? And then third would be, should we deduct our student loans or mortgages or any of those liabilities, and we're calculating our net assets for the purpose of zakat? Thank you.
No, sure. So on your first point, it's zakat is proportionate to the underlying zakatable assets, right, in your 401k or in your retirement fund, right, your retirement account. It's difficult to work that out always. That's why in the UK we develop these proxies or for different types of funds, where, because in the UK we have equities fund, we have property funds, we have different types of funds. I know when it comes to 401k, it's not easy to invest in different asset classes. It's more restricted to equities, but in the UK we have a lot of flexibility in what we can invest in. So it's all on, if you get your total value each year and then you work out what's your net zakatable assets, and if it's equities, then typically 25-30%, right, for equities usually works from my experience in the UK, and I don't foresee the US markets to be any different really when it comes to the zakatable assets on the balance sheet. So that's your first query. Your second query, when it comes to land, then if you've purchased that land and you're trading, you're selling, you've listed that, it's listed on the market, you're looking for a seller, right? With the intention that you've bought this to sell, then it's zakatable every single year, because that land now is simply like a trade asset. But if you've bought this with no clear intention, you've bought it, you're not firm on selling, rather it's if ever you need to sell, you'll sell it, right? It's just like a long-term kind of security of yours. It's just land there, it'll appreciate in value. Right now, there's no intention of selling it whatsoever. Then it will not be zakatable. You will not have to pay zakat on the land, right? Yeah, in future, you may sell, right? That's with anything really that we buy of this nature. Yes, the downside of this is, if Allah save you, if you were ever in a situation where you needed zakat, you wouldn't be able to receive zakat because you have this land. You'd have to liquidate that land, right? But you don't have to pay zakat on it either right now, because it's not really a trade asset, okay? So that's number two. And number three was on your liabilities. When it comes on liabilities, you can deduct liabilities which have been incurred, right? And whatever you're paying for the next 12 months, that can be deducted. So if you're not paying anything in the next 12 months, rather it's like after 24 months you'll start making payments, you can't deduct that liability. But if the liability has been incurred, that's the first thing. So you can't deduct something like 2 months down the line, the electricity bill. That's not been incurred as of yet. So you can't deduct that. What next month's kind of grocery bill, you can't deduct that. It's not been incurred, right? All you can do, anything which has been incurred and it's due for payment from now or within the next 12 months, you can deduct that. That's fine to be deducted. Yeah, if you have any interest payments, scholars typically advise not to deduct that. And it's only capital, principal kind of payments that you deduct. So I hope that's clear.
So you will only deduct the amount that you paid back as the mortgage or whatever for that year. But if I have a loan of $10,000, I can't reduce my zakatable assets by $10,000 and then pay zakat on that, right?
Yeah, that's right. So even when it comes to loans, whatever you're intending to pay within the next 12 months, you deduct.
Okay, interesting. So thank you, Mustafa, for the question. There's a related question actually, which was in the chat. It's anonymous, so I don't know who asked it, so I can't bring them on. But the person asked, if I have $100,000 land investment, but not getting any profit from it, but I have a credit card loan, $50,000 for luxurious purposes, what would be the zakat?
Yeah, no, good question. See, when it comes to investments, one thing you have to understand is the word investment is very broad. What do we mean by investment? Have you bought that just as a surplus asset that one day in the future you'll sell if required? Or is it just like it's become a store of value, right? To preserve your wealth, because we know the dollar, the pound is depreciating because of inflation. So we want to store our wealth in a different form, right? And if that's what we mean by investment, then that has a separate zakat connotation to it and zakat kind of result. If it's a matter of trading, you've bought this to sell. That look, I've bought this land, I'm going to sell this. My intention is only to sell this. I'm selling it next year or in 5 years. If it's trading that you've bought to resell, then it's zakat. There's zakat on it every single year. But if it's like you've bought this land with no real firm intention, yeah, maybe one day in the future you'll sell, maybe you won't, maybe you'll keep it, right? There's no certainty in anything of what you're doing. Then there's no zakat on that land, right? As of yet, because it's not a trade asset. So you have to every person should see, am I trading in this? And what does it mean to trade? A person who's trading is typically either he's listed this item, his intention is firm to sell, right? He's always looking in the market, looking at its value, waiting for it to sell, looking for a buyer. That's what you call trading. So that's on the land kind of, and it doesn't matter whether you're getting profit or not, right? It's on your intention and what you're doing with it when it comes to zakat purposes. So you can have a business which is in a loss, but there's still zakat on it. Because zakat doesn't work on your P&L, right? Your profit and loss. Rather, zakat works upon the balance sheet and the assets within the business, even if the business is loss making. Then the second question you had was, I have a credit card loan which is of $50,000 for luxurious purposes. How would my zakat be calculated in that way? Yeah, in this scenario, you still have Islam encourages us to always pay off debt. That's like a huge thing, right? We shouldn't take on debt which is beyond our means, or number two, it's just without any objective, right? That having too much debt is also not a good thing in Sharia. The Messenger of Allah would make dua and ask Allah's protection from overwhelming debt. Okay, but yeah, you can deduct it. Whatever you will intend to pay within the next 12 months can be deducted. Same rule applies, because you owe somebody, you owe people, and owing people takes precedence over the right of Allah when it comes to zakat, because people need the money. Allah doesn't need the money.
That's actually very interesting, the way you put it. Couple of offshoots of that question. So first of all, by the way, somebody asked, you mentioned 26% of the asset class. Is this for all asset classes or just specific asset classes?
So this is just when it's a fund of equities, right? Okay. When you have a fund full of equities, our research in the UK found that 26% typically covers your zakat liability, because companies have typically less than 26% of zakatable assets.
So should we make a statement, Mufti Faraz, that this research was for UK and we are proxying it for US? We don't know. Exactly.
That's prudent. That's the right thing to do. This is a UK-based thing. I think the US should have its own kind of research done.
Okay.
Yeah. But I wouldn't be surprised if the results are similar, to be honest.
Yeah. And I certainly feel, and I'll check with our other scholars on the Sharia board as well, because this topic is really interesting, especially when it comes to investments. right? Because standard, what my checking account is, I know how much money I had, I can pay 2.5% of that. But when it becomes, I have a 401k and a 529, and I have an investment in this and a land for that, I think that's when it becomes, when we have to defer to scholars like yourself to learn from it. So that's we'll do that. So a related question, when you were talking about land that's not for investment sake. So for example, I just bought some land and it's there. So does jewelry, like my wife owns, there's difference of opinion on it, right? People come to terms, and really it's a hot topic. How should I pay zakat, or she should pay zakat on her jewelry?
Yeah, so
sell it ever.
Yeah. So in this instance, I mean, typically, if you follow the Hanafi school and you perform your salah in the Hanafi way, as an example, right? Then according to that view, zakat is due upon jewelry, whether you're wearing it, whether you're not wearing it, whatever form, gold and silver. It's all about gold and silver. Zakat is due upon gold and silver. If it's any other kind of metal, zakat is not due upon that, right? So if it's gold and silver, zakat will always be due, regardless of how many carats it is. Either you'll pay zakat on the price per gram of that particular carat of gold.
Right. So even if it's personal use or not, we have to give zakat on that. That actually makes sense. So on that topic, if I were to purchase gold, and I'm not intending it to be an investment, but I intend it to be a hedge. Dollar and what's happening in inflation is 8 point something% now.
Yeah.
So what happens to zakat in that case? It's not an investment. It's a hedge against currency risk.
Yeah. See, it's a good point. Even though it's not an investment, gold itself is designated as zakat asset. Why is that? It's because gold and silver have natural monetary, you could say, features. Okay, especially gold, right? In terms of its scarcity, in terms of its durability, portability, it being finite, it has all the ingredients of being a medium of exchange in a form of money. So from a Sharia perspective, gold is seen to be, and that's why gold is like your safe haven for the asset, right? People always resort to gold. Now it's Bitcoin, it's becoming Bitcoin. But typically, when the currency starts to tank, what do people do? They rush to start buying gold, right? Mm-hmm. That was a classical kind of like move. Now people are going to buy Bitcoin and these types of assets. But gold naturally has within it features of money, right? From a Sharia and Islamic perspective. That's why it's always zakatable. It has that kind of like power in it. Allah's created it in that way. So regardless of why you buy gold, whether it's for a hedge, whether it's for an investment, whether it's for jewelry, because gold is malleable, you can always change its form, right? It'll always be zakatable.
Is this all covered in your book, Mufti Faraz, as you mentioned earlier?
Yes.
Okay, I'll try to find the link for your book. And it's available, if I remember correctly.
It's on Amazon, yeah.
Okay, so I'll send a link, inshallah, to all the people who attended it, because this is interesting. I also know I have a book here somewhere, a primer to Islamic finance that you recommended. I actually went through it myself recently.
Oh, wow.
Wonderful book, although it's not just zakat, it's an overall topic there. One more question was about Aghaz itself. I'll answer that. Is it available for US? Right now, today, it's only available for US. I'm not sure which country. It's an anonymous question. But if it's UK, for example, UK is on our list to expand this year. Middle East, MENA region, Pakistan, we are doing a lot of work on actually expansion for there. We won't expand to all of these. I don't want to boil the ocean and say Malaysia and this and that. I can't promise that, but some strategic locations we will plan to, inshallah, expand this year. And UK is about one potential target. Canada is another one. And then we are into the Pakistan and MENA region, which is our target. If you join our waiting list, we'll keep you updated on our expansion plans there. So this person clarified it's for France. We don't have any plans for France, but if you feel that there's plenty of customers who can benefit from some service like this, we certainly will explore that. So thank you for that. I'm going to ask Sister Reshma. Sister Reshma is I've learned a lot from her. She asked a question, and I think it's prudent if I just allow her to talk, if she's okay with it, and she can ask that question herself. But meanwhile, there was another question of when is zakat due? Mufti Faraz, if you want to answer that.
Yeah, sure. So zakat is due once a year. It's based, every person will have their own zakat year end, right? So, for example, if it's the first of Ramadan that you pay zakat, you look at what you have in terms of assets on the first of Ramadan, your gold, your silver, your cash, receivables, money owed to you if you've lent money out to somebody, or outstanding invoices for any sales that you've made, your trade assets that you have, and then the zakatable assets within your investments. Okay, that's typically what is zakatable. So you take all of that, deduct any of the debts that we mentioned, and pay 2.5% of the net figure.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Reshma. It's great to see you here. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Ramadan Mubarak, and Jazakallah for such an enlightening seminar. I apologize, I joined a little late, so I don't know if this question was answered, but I've been, in the past, I've been a licensed insurance agent, and also dealt a lot with the end of life procedures, and specifically burial. And it is a cost that is very expensive if someone doesn't plan it ahead of time. So my question was, first of all, is the purchase of a zakat, purchase of a burial plot, zakat eligible? And if it is, it's actually almost $2,000 to $10,000 sometimes to purchase a burial plot. And oftentimes it's financed interest-free by the companies that offer that. So what would be the process of paying zakat on something that somebody buys for over 3 years' time or 4 years' time, and they're paying a installment payment, and the value changes over time because you don't know when you're going to pass away, but you actually have an asset that you're leaving behind for your heirs to bury you. So I just wanted your input on that because of COVID, this impacted the funds that Masajid had sometimes set aside for burial. And the topic came up that people should actually invest in a burial plot, specifically children with aging parents. It's a very difficult topic to discuss, but something that is a burden on the family when someone passes away. So Jazakallah khair for answering that.
Yeah, sure. It's a very good question. It's something that we all need to consider. Even in the UK, we're facing the same kind of like crisis where the value of plots is just going through the roof, right? It's becoming very expensive for the ordinary family to be able to cover the costs. So we can't use zakat to buy plots, right? That you can't use zakat for that. That's like the first kind of clarification just want to make. Zakat has to be paid to people. How can zakat be used in this instance? Yeah, if you have a family member if somebody was to pass away, and the family member can't cover the costs, and they're responsible now to bear the costs, right? Or they're the ones who take on that liability, and they fall below the nisab threshold. That's a zakat threshold, which makes somebody eligible. If they're below the threshold, then you can potentially give it to this person now. Then he can buy or pay for the expenses for the burial plot. That's one thing. Second thing, when it comes to, I think it's definitely a product which needs to be offered. People need to make this product. It's something that can be productized from a Sharia perspective to save for a plot of land, or even finance it from a Sharia perspective, Islamic perspective. That's something which is quite easy to do. It's not difficult to do either, to create a Sharia compliant product for that. And it's something which should be done even in the UK. What's happened recently, in the UK, we've had burial funds which have been developed where people almost like contribute like a premium monthly. It works on like a takaful basis, like a cooperative basis. Every month you put in like $20 or $15. Of course, the premium is calculated according to your risk, right? And according to how likely or how old you are, your medical condition and everything. And you just put in $20, $15 on a monthly basis. And if you were to pass away, the fund will cover your burial for you. So yeah, there are products out there which can work to develop such a thing. So I hope that kind of clarifies your question.
So one thing on that, let's say I bought this plot though, right? I think maybe that was a flavor of Sister's question. Let's say I bought a $10,000 plot and it's not used. I'm not using the plot yet. So do I pay zakat on that?
No. Even though it's an asset, zakat is not due on every asset, right? So your laptop, even though it's expensive, it might be the latest MacBook, right? Zakat is not due on such assets. It's only on those things which are either gold, silver, cash, you're trading, and investments in zakatable assets, basically, nothing else. So even though it's a surplus, it might be surplus in a sense, it's just sitting there. But if you have surplus land which you're not trading or anything, the only time that comes into this zakat equation is if Allah save us, if you were in a position of being zakat eligible yourself, right? You would not be able to receive zakat unless you liquidate that land which is surplus. So that's
I
how it affects the zakat kind of agenda.
I think. Okay.
Jazakallah khair. I guess that's what my question was, that if somebody owned the land, what would be the zakat on it? If they're buying it as an investment for their masjid or their community and then selling it.
Yeah, so if they're trading in that land, right, they're buying and selling it, then zakat would be due upon the entire value of the land. So if for example, I find I have the capital to buy these plots of land and sell them on to people, right? So I'm just literally waiting for buyers to come. So I've bought them with a very clear intention to resell. Zakat is due on the value of the land every single year.
Even if I block the rate and don't increase it just for the intention that it's purchased for the purpose of our community, and
Yeah.
it's
Even then, because it becomes a trade. I mean, it's good. You're selling at a cost price, right? It's definitely rewarding, but because it's at the end of the day a trade asset, it would still be zakatable.
that was my question, because that's what some people have done here, at least from my knowledge, that some communities have purchased land so that it doesn't increase over time, but it's still a cost. So when someone needs it, they sell it at cost, but over time it's an asset.
Yeah,
So it is zakat.
that's right.
Zakat. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you, Sister Reshma. So you just said something, Mufti Faraz, and that's also one question that somebody asked us. So I'll just double the question there. You said zakat only is given to people. There's plenty of organizations here that are zakat eligible, or they say they are. In America, at least, there's plenty of like educational institutions. So we're paying zakat to an institution, not to a person. But you made a very categorical statement that zakat is to people.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to institutions that take zakat, many a time what they do is, and obviously I can't speak for everybody, but from what I've seen, some of them, what they do is they take zakat on behalf of the students. So there's still people at the line, at the supply chain, the chain of it, right? At the end, there's still people there, but it's just that the institution is representing people. But the ownership of that money should go to an individual. Right? Allah mentions individuals when it comes to zakat in the Quran, and typically we should give when it comes to, we should be very careful where our zakat goes, and it shouldn't be just for anything and everything. Right? Zakat is, Allah has fixed certain areas and certain types of people who should be supported with zakat.
Okay, so somebody also asked, and I assume this would be covered in your book that we will share the link with everybody. Do you have a paper list of zakatable assets or website?
Yeah. So I think in my book, it's been covered. And even I think I've discussed more than 20 or 25 different asset classes when it comes to zakat and investments, right? Going down from the Sharia compliance, what are those investments? And then the zakat treatment of those investments as well. So yeah, you're more than welcome to look at that.
And you know, our friend Ibrahim and Mohsin, our friends from Islamic Finance Guru, they've done a really good job this Ramadan about zakat literacy. I mean, I'm overwhelmed by the content, subhanAllah, that they've created. And some of that with you, Mufti Faraz, earlier this month. So I think they also covered quite a bit about which institutions are zakat eligible and not, and so on. Although there was definitely a UK flavor in their talk, not just US. So that's that. We are running on time. There's one more question. We can quickly cover that. But I also want to respect Mufti Faraz's time, because that's iftar time for him also in shortly. So maybe one last question here, and then if anybody else has any question from the audience, please type it out so we can take it. But we'd like to wrap up in 2 minutes so that Mufti Faraz can do his iftar. The question is on the same clarification as before on the 401k, that if I were to liquidate everything, withdraw, I get a check for $6,000. Do I pay 25% or 2.5% of that? Or was it 2.5% off the 26% of that amount?
Yeah, as I said, look, there's a difference of opinion on this, right? Personally, at present, I just advise people to pay on the full value that you have. So it'll be 25% of the full value, because there's a difference of opinion among scholars whether it's the most appropriate thing to deduct the hypothetical penalty that can be charged right now, because it's not been incurred as of yet, right? And when you eventually access your 401k, those payments will not be there. Some of those payments anyway, those penalties and stuff. So some scholars are of the view that you shouldn't deduct them, and that's where personally I feel right now it's what my advice is. But this is something we're always reviewing and looking at. If there's a scholar which you follow has a different view, then you're most welcome to follow that view. That's not a problem.
I think I I will inshallah facilitate a dialogue of at least 3, I know 4 scholars who are passionate about this topic, one being yourself, and then 3 in California. I'd inshallah set up a fireside kind of conversation just for you 4 or 3 to talk about some of these topics, and we'll all benefit from that. So
sure.
I'll inshallah coordinate that as we go forward. So last call, if there's any other question from the audience, please raise hand or type it out so we can cover it. And until if anybody does or not, Mufti Faraz, Jazakumullah khair. This has been super helpful personally for me. I'm sure for the people who were here, and also I'm sure to the vast majority of our customers and others who will benefit from it when we share this recording with them shortly. So thank you for that. Really appreciate it. As always, you know, it's wonderful to talk to you. You're so generous with your time.
Likewise.
So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay. So looks like no more questions. In that case, Jazakallah khair to everybody for attending. It was my pleasure. We all learned from it. I learned from it. So thank you for this. And thank you, Mufti Faraz. And inshallah, I will talk to you all soon.
Inshallah. Take care, everyone. And remember your du'as as well. Assalamu alaikum.